Hello everyone. This week on the Washington Examiner Newsmaker series, I am excited to welcome freshman Congresswoman from South Carolina, Nancy MACE, who talks about how her experience at the Citadel prepped her for Hell Week in Congress and her ongoing Twitter battle with leftists, including AOC. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Newsmaker series.
And thank you so much for having me.
So you've been trending on Twitter for a few days now, not just because of your feud with the illustrious AOC, but also because liberals seem to take issue with your belief that as a pistol-packing mama and Congresswoman, you should be able to carry a weapon at the Capitol in order to protect yourself, and I would argue probably protect your colleagues as well. What is your response to them and their vitriol for the Second Amendment?
Well, the events of January 6th just really underscore the need to ensure that we feel safe and that we are safe. I felt like a sitting duck when I was barricaded in my office with the doors locked, the shades drawn, the lights out, and all I could hear were sirens. And all we knew that was going on were the images we were seeing on social media from time to time. And we were actually even evacuated at one point because there were pipe bombs planted nearby at the Republican and the Democrat headquarters. And so the one place where we needed to feel safe and needed to exercise potentially our Second Amendment rights were on the Capitol that day. And I never want to be in that situation again. And back in December, before all this happened, I'd received many threats during my congressional campaign and especially after the election. And in fact, I applied for my concealed weapons permit in South Carolina because of a threat that I had received. So these are important issues, and we should be having this discussion, this debate, and we should be able to keep ourselves safe.
You, of course, wrote a whole book about your experience at the Citadel. You were the first female cadet to graduate from there. Do you think that your experience there has helped you prepare in any way as being serving the people of South Carolina?
Certainly. I never expected this Congress, the 117th Congress, to be what it is almost 6 weeks in now. And the first week at the Citadel is called Hell Week. And I can attest that the first week in Congress this year was also Hell Week. And I do feel like I have been prepared for this sort of thing. We're in a very, we're in a place in this country where what you say has consequences. And it's very divisive. And we can't, if we're going to rebuild our country, rebuild our political parties respectively for our country, we can't continue doing what we're doing right now.
And there aren't too many members of Congress that are veterans. And of course, you have veterans on the Democratic side and the Republican side. Do you guys considering creating your own veteran caucus?
Well, I'm not a military vet, although most people in my family, most of my family members have served or are serving. But at the Citadel, only about a third of our graduates go into the military. And I spent my first couple of years in corporate and have been in business for over 20 years.
You came to Congress, of course, with a lot of Republican women. You've talked about what the Republican Party potentially needs to do going forward. Do you think that in 2 years in the midterms, when you and all of these other Republican freshman class are running for re-election, the Republican Party could potentially make gains with female voters?
We're going to have to if we want to get the majority back. This was a great freshman class in terms of the number of women. We more than doubled the number of women in the Republican conference. That's huge. That's historic. And it's just a reminder that Democrat women don't hold a monopoly on breaking glass ceilings. Republican women have been doing it all their lives. And to get that kind of recognition in this cycle, in this session, is remarkable. But we can't stop there. We've got to do it again. We've got to find qualified women, qualified immigrants and minorities and Black and brown Americans who believe in the same things that we do.
And do you think that the Republican Party can definitely and is going to get behind that, considering, we had some pretty good results down ballot with those groups that you just mentioned?
We had fantastic results down ballot, and we saw the party's leadership get behind these diverse group of candidates. Not only do we have more diverse faces, but our ideology is also diverse. And that's important for us as a party to be a big tent, to be accepting of those with opinions who might differ.
So your state of South Carolina and your district is pretty demographically diverse. Are there issues that you think that moderate and left-leaning voters care about that you've picked up the baton for and that you think the Republican Party should focus on a national level?
Certainly. Transportation and infrastructure is a huge one. It doesn't see red or blue or Democrat or Republican, and there will be an infrastructure package, I believe, that we'll work on with this administration. I'm encouraged by the calls for unity. At the same time, though, we're seeing a lot of partisanship in many of our committee hearings where Democrats won't even consider a single Republican amendment as we go through the budget reconciliation process. So I have concerns as a Republican. While many are talking about unity, are we actually going to be able to work together and do that? I'm willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with me. The other thing that I think is really important too are fiscal issues. In my district, whether you're Republican or Democrat, people care about how the government spends their money, particularly right now when we don't have any money to freely be giving out. We don't have room for waste, fraud, or abuse right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most people in my district consider themselves fiscally conservative, regardless of whether or not they have an R or a D near their name.
You kind of touched on my next question. That's going to be obviously Democrats control the White House. Democrats control both houses of Congress. What is your plan, and what is the Republican Party planning over the next 2 years, at least until potentially in the midterms things could flip, to make sure that that fiscal responsibility and those conservative small government principles are able to get pushed through?
I know for me, I only have one vote, and I'm going to stick to my principles on many of those issues and hope that my colleagues will do the same. And I believe that they will, because those are going to be winning issues 2 and 4 years from now. When we have record deficits and record debt every single year going up, particularly with COVID-19, and we're unable or unwilling to cut spending anywhere across the board, we've got real problems, and we can't continue to do this. And this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an issue about America. We have millions of people who are out of work. We've got millions of kids who want to go back to school. We have millions of people that want to need vaccinations in their arms. We have tremendous needs for this country, and the only way we can address those needs is if Congress really looks at the way that we spend, and perhaps might just look at even just taking a penny on the dollar. Something as simple as cutting a penny on the dollar would be tremendous for our economic future.
And my final question for you does tie into that as well. You've chastised Democrats for focusing more on this second impeachment trial of President Donald Trump instead of the release and the infrastructure around the COVID vaccine and Americans getting that. Or, as you just mentioned, I sit here in Los Angeles where LAUSD is saying that they are not going to reopen. What issues do you think can be joined together? Like, say, if you and AOC were to sit down in a room, could you come out in agreement on any of these?
Well, certainly. I actually co-sponsored a letter with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez just 2 weeks ago on ensuring that everyone that worked on Capitol Hill on January 6th gets access to the mental health care that they need. Everyone experiences trauma differently, and many people that day need access to mental health counselors to work through it over the weeks and months to come. We've already done that. And then, of course, there was the implosion on Twitter, and I lived rent-free in her Twitter feed for a number of days. Not sorry about that. For telling the truth, I'll never apologize.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Congresswoman, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.